The rain hammered against the windshield as Marcus Chen gripped the steering wheel, his 7-year-old daughter Emma asleep in the backseat. 3 months ago, his world had shattered when his wife Sarah died in a car accident, leaving him drowning in grief and medical debt. Now, a certified letter sat in his glove compartment, informing him that a great uncle he'd never met had left him a house on the coast of Maine. Marcus had no choice but to accept it. His landlord had just given him 30 days to vacate their apartment, and his teaching salary couldn't stretch to cover rent anywhere else in the city. This mysterious inheritance felt like either a lifeline or another cruel twist of fate. As he drove up the winding coastal road, Marcus caught his first glimpse of the property through the mist. The house stood alone on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic, a weathered Victorian structure that seemed to defy the elements. It was larger than he'd imagined, with peeling paint and shutters hanging at odd angles. The attorney had warned him the place needed work, but Marcus felt his stomach sink. This wasn't just a fixer-upper. This was a commitment he wasn't sure he could handle. He parked and gently woke Emma, who rubbed her eyes and stared at their new home with wide-eyed uncertainty. Hand in hand, they approached the front door. The key turned with difficulty in the old lock, and the door creaked open to reveal a dusty foyer with a grand staircase. Afternoon light filtered through grimy windows, casting strange shadows across the wooden floors. That's when Marcus saw him. An elderly man stood in the doorway to what appeared to be the kitchen, holding a steaming mug. He was thin and weathered, probably in his 80s, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. For a moment, nobody moved. Marcus instinctively pulled Emma behind him, his heart racing. "I'm sorry," the old man said quickly, raising one hand in a peaceful gesture. "I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Walter. I was your great-uncle's caretaker and friend. I've been looking after the place." Marcus's mind raced. The attorney hadn't mentioned anyone living here. "How long have you been staying here?" Walter set down his mug carefully. 23 years. Your great-uncle Theodore and I met at a veterans support group after we both came back from Vietnam. He had this big house and no family nearby. I had nowhere to go. He offered me the guest cottage out back in exchange for help maintaining the property. After he got sick, I moved into the main house to care for him. Marcus felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just an empty house. It was someone's home. "I didn't know. The lawyer never said anything about you. Theodore probably never mentioned it in any official capacity," Walter said, his voice gentle. "We were just two old soldiers helping each other out. If you need me to leave, I understand. I've been packing my things. I can be out by tomorrow." Emma peeked out from behind Marcus, her curiosity overcoming her shyness. "Where will you go?" she asked in her small voice. Walter smiled sadly. "I'll figure something out, sweetheart. I always do." That night, after Walter had retreated to his room, Marcus lay awake in an upstairs bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The ethical weight of the situation pressed on him. He could legally ask Walter to leave. The house was his now. But what kind of man would that make him? He thought of Sarah, who had always seen the best in people, who had volunteered at homeless shelters even when they barely had enough for themselves. What would she want him to do? Over the next few days, an unspoken arrangement developed. Walter continued his routines, maintaining a respectful distance while Marcus and Emma explored their new home. Marcus began to notice things: the meticulous care Walter had put into the garden, the repairs he'd clearly made over the years, the way he'd preserved Theodore's library and photographs. This house had been loved, maintained by someone who treated it as sacred trust rather than property. Emma, with the uncomplicated wisdom of children, bridged the gap first. She wandered into the kitchen one morning where Walter was making breakfast. "Can you teach me to make pancakes like that?" she asked. "They smell like the ones Mommy used to make." Marcus watched from the doorway as Walter's weathered face softened. "I'd be honored to, if your dad says it's okay." Something shifted in that moment. Marcus nodded, and over those pancakes, Walter began to share stories about Theodore. He spoke of a man who'd been wounded in war and in life, who'd lost his own family young and never remarried, who'd turned his grief into generosity by opening his home to someone who needed it. "He saved my life," Walter said quietly, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. "After the war, I couldn't hold down a job. The nightmares, the flashbacks. I'd lost everything, including my faith in humanity. Theodore gave me purpose again. He showed me that it's never too late to build a family, even if it doesn't look like what you expected. Marcus felt tears stinging his eyes. He understood that sentiment more than he could express. As weeks passed, Walter became an unexpected pillar in their lives. He showed Marcus how to fix the temperamental furnace, where the property lines were, which contractors in town were trustworthy. He taught Emma to identify birds along the cliff, to understand the patterns of the tides. He never overstepped, never presumed to replace what they'd lost, but his gentle presence filled spaces Marcus hadn't even realized were empty. One evening, Marcus found Walter on the back porch, staring out at the ocean as the sun set in brilliant oranges and purples. Marcus sat down beside him. "Walter, I've been thinking," Marcus began. "This house is too big for just Emma and me. And honestly, we have no idea what we're doing here. You've been taking care of this place for over 2 decades. It's more your home than it'll ever be mine." Walter started to protest, but Marcus held up his hand. "I'm not saying you're staying out of charity," Marcus continued. "I'm saying I need your help. Emma needs stability, and I need to figure out how to be a single parent in a place where I don't know anyone. The guest cottage is yours for as long as you want it. But I was hoping you might consider staying in the main house, at least for a while. Help us turn this place into a home." Walter's eyes glistened with moisture. "Your great-uncle would have liked that arrangement. He always said this house was meant to shelter people who needed shelter." "Then we'll honor his legacy together," Marcus said, extending his hand. The months that followed transformed all of them. Marcus found a teaching position at the local high school. Emma flourished, her laughter once again filling rooms that had been too quiet. Walter became the grandfather she'd never had, the friend Marcus desperately needed. They established new traditions: Sunday dinners together, maintenance Saturdays where they worked on the house as a team, evening walks along the cliff where they'd talk about everything and nothing. 1 year after arriving at the Cliffside house, Marcus stood in that same spot where he'd first seen Walter. Emma was helping Walter plant flowers in the garden, their laughter carried on the ocean breeze. Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here, about loss and unexpected grace, about how sometimes salvation arrives in the form of an elderly man holding a cup of coffee in what you thought was your empty house. He'd inherited more than property that day. He'd inherited a legacy of compassion, a reminder that family isn't always about blood, and that in our darkest moments, humanity has a remarkable capacity to catch us when we fall. Walter hadn't just been squatting in their house. He'd been waiting to show them what home really meant, to pass along the gift Theodore had once given him, the knowledge that we're never as alone as we think, and that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't measured in assets, but in the connections we forge with souls who understand what it means to need and to be needed in return.